Hello and welcome to Millennium News Hour. I am Tanziba Naurin. In today's bulletin, we will present trending news from across the nation and the world. Let's begin with the headlines of the day. Chinese balloon soars across US. Blinken scraps Beijing trip. US reunites nearly 700 kids taken from parents under Trump. Officer shot at public library remains in critical condition. Bodies found in an abandoned Michigan apartment are those of three missing rappers, police say. Texas power woes linger as deep freeze covers New England. New rules would limit sugar in school meals for first time. Suspect in disappearance of Dallas Zoo tamarin monkeys is arrested following aquarium visit. NATO urges Russia to respect nuclear pact with the US. EU prepares more Russia sanctions, Kremlin readies offensive. Lauded fashion designer Paco Rabanne dies at age 88. Ex-pop star Gary Glitter freed from UK prison. Netanyahu visits France amid spike in Middle East tensions. Train hits boys in Western Germany, one killed, one injured. Pope in South Sudan warns leaders as peace process stalls. Paul McDonald give US 2-0 lead over Uzbekistan in Davis Cup. Ford returns to Formula One in partnership with Red Bull. And Ukraine pushes to exclude Russia from 2024 Paris Olympics. Now news in detail. A huge high-altitude Chinese balloon sailed across the US on Friday, drawing severe Pentagon accusations of spying and sending excited or alarmed Americans outside with binoculars. Secretary of State Antony Blinken abruptly cancelled a high-stakes Beijing trip aimed at easing US-China tensions. The cancellation came despite China's claim that the balloon was a weather research airship that had blown off course. The Pentagon rejected that out of hand, and China's contention that the balloon, about the size of two school buses, was not being used for surveillance and had only limited navigational ability. The balloon was detected earlier over sensitive military sites in Montana but had moved eastward over the heartland of the central United States by midday and was expected to remain in US airspace for several days, officials said. The development marked a new blow to already strained US-Chinese relations that have been in a downward spiral for years over numerous issues. Still, US officials maintained that diplomatic channels remain open and that Blinken was willing to travel to China at an appropriate time. President Joe Biden declined to comment on the matter when questioned at an economic event. Two 2024 re-election challengers, former President Donald Trump and Nikki Haley, the former South Carolina governor and UN ambassador, said the US should immediately shoot down the balloon. Discovery of the balloon was announced by Pentagon officials who said one of the places it was spotted was over the state of Montana, which is home to one of America's three nuclear missile silo fields at Malmstrom Air Force Base. A senior defense official said the US prepared fighter jets, including F-22s, to shoot it down if ordered. The Pentagon ultimately recommended against that, noting that even as the balloon was over a sparsely populated area of Montana, its size would create a debris field large enough to put people at risk. Brigadier General Pat Ryder, Pentagon press secretary, refused to say on Friday whether there was any new consideration of shooting the balloon down. A Biden administration task force designed to reunite children separated from their families during President Trump's presidency has reconnected nearly 700 children with their families, officials said Thursday. President Joe Biden issued an executive order on his first day in office to reunite families that were split up under the Trump administration's widely condemned practice of forcibly separating parents and children at the US-Mexico border to discourage illegal immigration. Thursday marked the two-year anniversary of the task force. According to figures released by the Department of Homeland Security, 3,881 children were separated from their families from 2017 to 2021. About 74% of those have been reunited with their families, 2,176 before the task force was created and 689 afterward. But that still leaves nearly 1,000 children. Of those, 148 are in the reunification process. The department pledged to continue the work until all separated families that can be found have the opportunity to reunite with their children. The Trump administration separated thousands of migrant parents from their children as it moved to criminally prosecute people for illegally crossing the southwestern border. Minors who could not be held in criminal custody with their parents were transferred to the Department of Health and Human Services. They were then typically sent to live with a sponsor, often a relative or someone else with a connection to the family. Hundreds of families have sued the federal government. Families can register for reunification services through a website and can get help with steps such as applying for humanitarian parole that would allow them to come to the US, as well as for behavioral health services to help them. A Tennessee police officer who was shot at a public library while responding to a trespassing complaint remained in extremely critical condition on Friday, Memphis police said. The officer was hospitalized Thursday after the shooting at the Poplar White Station Public Library, a small building on a busy Memphis street surrounded by high-rise office buildings, restaurants, and stores. The shooting came amid heightened scrutiny nationally of how much force police use after 5 officers in the same department were fired last month and charged with murder and other crimes in the fatal beating of Tyre Nichols. The case weren't connected, though the policies of the Memphis Police Department are under intense review locally and nationally. Officers were called to the library and encountered a man who had been the subject of a trespassing call in the same neighborhood, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation spokeswoman Kelly McAllister said. The man had started a confrontation with another person inside the library, and when 2 officers attempted to talk with him, he pulled out a weapon and shot one of them, McAllister said. The other officer drew his weapon, shooting and killing Torrance Jackson Jr., 28 years old, of Indianapolis, the TBI said in a statement. Jackson was a black man. The 2 officers involved are also black. There were employees and patrons inside the library at the time of the shooting, but no one else was injured, McAllister said. 3 bodies found in an abandoned apartment building in the Detroit area Thursday are believed to be of 3 rappers who have been missing for nearly 2 weeks, according to a spokesperson for Highland Park. The bodies were found Thursday in Highland Park, the city's public relations director, Lakeisha Brown, said Friday morning. Michigan State police officers were investigating an abandoned apartment complex in Highland Park, roughly 6 miles northwest of Detroit, as part of a death investigation Thursday, the department said in a tweet. It said multiple victims had been located in the building, but had not yet been identified. As of now, we haven't confirmed the identity of any victims inside or a manner of death, the state police said. Please remember, all victims have families and we don't have the luxury of gazing on their identity and then retracting if we didn't get it right. The state police noted that progress in the investigation was being slowed due to the building's poor condition and a rat infestation. Brown said Friday that the bodies were believed to be of Armani Kelly, Montoya Gibbons and Dant Wicker, who had not been seen or heard from since a January 21 gig they were supposed to perform at was cancelled. Their disappearance sparked an investigation involving multiple agencies. The mayor of Austin, Texas, responded to mounting criticism and apologized Friday for a lack of communication with residents as a winter storm coated the city in ice and cut power and heat to thousands of residents for days. The weather finally started to moderate Friday and bring some relief to frustrated Texans, particularly in Austin, where at any given time 30% of customers in the city of nearly a million were without electricity since the storm hit early this week. The city let its citizens down. The situation is unacceptable to the community and it's unacceptable to me, Mayor Kirk Watson, a Democrat, said at a news conference. And I'm sorry. Nearly 122,000 customers remained without power late Friday morning, according to poweroutage.us. Meanwhile, a new wave of frigid weather that forecasters warned could be the coldest in decades began rolling into the Northeast, leading communities to close schools and open warming centers. Wind chills in some higher elevations could punch below -50. In Texas, Austin officials compared damage from fallen trees and iced over power lines to tornadoes as they came under criticism for slow repairs and shifting timelines to restore power. Nearly 240,000 customers across the state lacked power early Friday, down from 430,000 on Thursday, according to poweroutage.us. U.S. agriculture officials on Friday proposed new nutrition standards for school meals, including the first limits on added sugars, with a focus on sweetened foods such as cereals, yogurt, flavored milk, and breakfast pastries. The plan, announced by Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack, also seeks to significantly decrease sodium in the meals served to the nation's school kids by 2029, while making the rules for foods made with whole grains more flexible. The goal is to improve nutrition and align with U.S. dietary guidelines in the program that serves breakfast to more than 15 million children and lunch to nearly 30 million children every day. Vilsack said, school meals happen to be the meals with the highest nutritional value of any meal that children can get outside the home, Vilsack said in an interview. The first limits on added sugars would be required in the 2025 to 2026 school year, starting with high sugar foods such as sweetened cereals, yogurts, and flavored milks. Under the plan, for instance, an 8-ounce container of chocolate milk could contain no more than 10 grams of sugar. Some popular flavored milks now contain twice that amount. The plan also limits sugary grain desserts such as muffins or donuts to no more than twice a week at breakfast. Police arrested a 24-year-old man in connection with the disappearance of 2 emperor tamarin monkeys from the Dallas Zoo, authorities said Friday. Pictures of a man believed to be of suspect Davion Irvin had been circulated throughout North Texas, and an employee at the Dallas World Aquarium recognized him on Thursday at the Marine facility, aquarium spokesperson Whelan Tate said in a statement. The suspect stopped an employee to ask questions regarding one of our animals, and that worker immediately recognized Mr. Irvin from prior reporting on the incident involving the suspected theft of two emperor tamarin monkeys, according to Tate. After authorities were called, approaching officers spotted Irvin boarding a Dallas area rapid transit train before he was taken into custody near the 1400 block of Pacific Avenue, Dallas police spokesperson Christine Lohman said in a statement. The investigation into all cases at the zoo are ongoing and further charges are possible, according to Lohman. The emperor tamarin monkeys were reported stolen from their habitats at the Dallas Zoo on Monday. Now it's time for global updates. NATO called Friday on Russia to respect the only treaty it has with the United States aimed at keeping a lead on nuclear weapons expansion and urged Moscow to allow on-the-ground inspections of military sites to resume. The so-called New START treaty was signed by Russia and the US in 2010. It caps at 1,550 the number of long-range nuclear warheads they can deploy and limits the use of missiles that can carry atomic weapons. It allows short-notice inspections of each other's nuclear bases and support facilities. We note with concern that Russia has failed to comply with legally binding obligations under the New START treaty, NATO ambassador said in a statement. The 30-nation US-led military alliance supports the treaty and believes that it helps to limit the expansion of nuclear forces. The envoy said that Russia's refusal to hold consultations or to allow US inspections since last August prevents the United States from exercising important rights under the treaty and undermines the United States' ability to adequately verify Russian compliance with the treaty's central limits. The European Union will unveil its 10th package of sanctions against Russia on February 24 to mark the anniversary of Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a senior official from the bloc said in Kiev on Friday, as Ukrainian forces gird for an expected Russian offensive in the coming weeks. The sanctions will target technology used by Russia's war machine. Among other things, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen told a news conference. The sanctions will take aim in particular at components used in the manufacturing of drones, she said, naming Iran as a key supplier of Russia. Closing loopholes that the Kremlin uses to circumvent sanctions will also be a priority, according to von der Leyen, who was on her fourth visit to the Ukrainian capital since the war began. The exact measures in the next EU sanctions package must be agreed upon by the bloc's 27 member countries, a process that can take weeks. Top EU officials met with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky in a show of support for the country as it battles to counter the Kremlin's forces and strives to join the EU as well as NATO. Paco Rabanne, the Spanish-born designer known for perfumes sold worldwide and his metallic space-age fashions, has died. The group that owns his fashion house announced on its website Friday. The house of Paco Rabanne wishes to honor our visionary designer and founder who passed away today at the age of 88. Among the most seminal fashion figures of the 20th century, his legacy will remain, the statement from beauty and fashion company Puig said. La Telegram newspaper quoted the mayor of Vence, David Robbo, as saying that Rabanne died at his home in the Brittany region town of Portsel. Rabanne's fashion house shows its collections in Paris and is scheduled to unveil the brand's latest ready-to-wear designs during the upcoming February 27 to March 3 Fashion Week. He was known as a rebel designer in a career that blossomed with his collaboration with the family-owned Puig, a Spanish company that now also owns other design houses, including Nina Ricci, Jean-Paul Gaultier, Caroline Herrera, and Dries Van Noten. The company also owns the fragrance brands Byredo and Penhaligon's. Former pop star Gary Glitter was released from prison in England on Friday after serving half of his 16-year prison sentence for sexually abusing three young girls in the 1970s. The 79-year-old singer, whose real name is Paul Gadd, was freed from a prison in Dorset in southwest England. It is common for offenders in the UK to be freed halfway through their sentences and then be placed on probation. Sex offenders like Paul Gadd are closely monitored by the police and probation service and face some of the strictest license conditions, including being fitted with a GPS tag, the Ministry of Justice said in a statement. If the offender breaches these conditions at any point, they can go back behind bars. The singer was found guilty of 1 count of attempted rape, 4 counts of indecent assault, and 1 count of sexual intercourse with a girl under the age of 13. Glitter was arrested in October 2012 under Operation U-Tree, the national investigation launched in the wake of the child abuse scandal surrounding the late BBC entertainer Jimmy Savile. Glitter is best known for the hit Rock and Roll, released in 1972, but he fell into disgrace after being convicted on child abuse charges in Vietnam. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with France's president, business leaders, and members of France's Jewish community during a trip to Paris starting Thursday that has angered Palestinian supporters amid a new spasm of violence in the Middle East. The visit started with a dinner meeting at the Élysée Palace, where French President Emmanuel Macron's office said he planned to share France's solidarity with Israel in the face of terrorism, but also stressed the need for everyone to avoid measures likely to feed the spiral of violence. Macron also is offering to help revive long-stalled dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians. Pro-Palestinian activists plan a protest in Paris on Saturday to decry Macron's decision to host Netanyahu at such a volatile time in the Middle East conflict. The demonstrators say they will also protest prison conditions in Israel for Palestinian militants, including solitary confinement and limits on family visits. Upon departing for France, Netanyahu said Iran and its nuclear program would be the main topic of our talk when he meets with Macron. Macron has criticized Iran's lack of transparency over its nuclear activities and warned that its support for Russia's war in Ukraine exposed Iran to further sanctions and growing isolation. One boy was killed and another seriously injured when they were hit by a freight train in western Germany, police said Friday. The boys, ages 9 and 10, were hit by the train in Recklinghausen, in the Ruhr industrial region on Thursday evening. The elder boy died while the younger was taken to a hospital. Police said Friday that his life was no longer in acute danger. They said there were no indications that other children were hit, though they were looking into whether others had been on the tracks before the accident. Pope Francis, on a novel ecumenical peace mission to the world's youngest country, warned South Sudan's political leaders on Friday that history will judge them harshly if they continue to drag their feet implementing a 2018 peace accord. Accompanying him to the overwhelmingly Christian country were the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, and the moderator of the Church of Scotland. They hope to cast a spotlight on what Francis has called a forgotten crisis. South Sudan gained independence from the majority Muslim Sudan in 2011, but has been beset by civil war and conflict. Thousands of people ululated and sang in 96-degree Fahrenheit heat as President Salva Kiir greeted the religious leaders at the airport in the capital, Juba. France's motorcade road was lined with Christians, Muslims, and traditional dancers waving Vatican, South Sudanese, and British flags. The Catholic, Anglican, and Presbyterian leaders have called for the country's political leaders to put aside their differences and work for the good of their people. Now it's time for business news. New York stock close price is 15,974.31. The NYSE composite is decreased by 148.27 points or 0.92%. Tokyo stock close price is 27,509.46. The Nikkei 225 index is increased by 107.41 points or 0.39%. Shanghai stock close price is 3,263.4059. The Shanghai Composite Index is decreased by 22.26 points or 0.68%. Hong Kong stock close price is 21,660.47. The Hang Seng Index is decreased by 297.89 points or 1.36%. Bombay stock close price is 60,841.88. The Sensex index is increased by 909.64 points or 1.52%. Let's have a look on today's sports stories. Australian Open semi-finalist Tommy Paul and Mackenzie McDonald, who beat Rafael Nadal at Melbourne Park, gave the United States a 2-0 lead over host Uzbekistan in Davis Cup qualifying on Friday. Paul beat Khumoyo Sultanov 6-1, 7-6 after McDonald's Davis Cup debut produced a 6-4, 6-1 victory over Sergey Fomin on an indoor hard court in Tashkent. The best of 5 match series finishes Saturday with 1 match in doubles followed by 2 in singles. The Americans can clinch a spot in the group stage of the Davis Cup finals if Rajiv Ram and Austin Krajicek defeat Fomin and Sanjar Faziev in doubles. Paul moved into the top 20 in the ATP rankings for the first time this week by reaching his first Grand Slam semi-final in Australia, where he lost to eventual champion Novak Djokovic. McDonald eliminated 22-time Grand Slam champion Nadal in the second round at the year's first Grand Slam tournament. Formula One's booming popularity in the United States has lured another American brand to the series as Ford said Friday it would return to the Globe-Trotting Series as the engine provider for Red Bull Racing. The partnership begins with immediate technical support this season, but Ford engines in 2026 when F1 adopts new hybrid regulations that lured Ford back after a 24-year absence. Red Bull Powertrains and Ford will partner on the development of a hybrid power unit that will supply engines to both Red Bull and AlphaTauri when new F1 regulations begin in 2026. The partnership, which is for at least 8 years, was announced in New York as Red Bull unveiled the car design it will use in 2023. Red Bull owned the constructors' title last season, and Max Verstappen is the two-time defending world champion. Ukraine stepped up efforts Friday to lobby international sports leaders against Russian participation in next year's Paris Olympics, as indications mount that the Games could see the biggest boycott since the Cold War. A meeting of the Ukrainian Olympic Committee did not commit to a boycott but approved plans to consult with and persuade sports officials around the world over the next 2 months. The committee members voted for consultations on preventing the participation of Russian and Belarusian athletes in all international competitions and a possible boycott. The International Olympic Committee is pushing to allow athletes from Russia and Belarus to compete at the 2024 Paris Games. They would take part without their national flags or anthems as neutral athletes. Let's have a look on today's weather forecast. That's all in today's news. Keep watching Millennium News 24 for latest updates. Millennium TV US and Millennium News 24 network is transmitted and available to be watched free for all at TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV and Apple TV. And also in all European countries and Australia available with the Sky Network, Worldwide Jagu TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jagu Video Network and Horizon Satellite globally. Stay connected with us for all types of informative and entertainment program. Thank you.